Hello, and welcome to the Distillery. I'm your host, Harry Lee Shanglun, and I'm laughing because I was having a really great conversation with our guest today and forgot to press the go live button. Our special guest is Mohamed Chamas. Hello, Mohamed. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm good. How are you doing? How's everyone? They can't answer.
Yeah, there are live viewers, but they can actually use the live chat, and we do get to see that. So if anyone live viewers want to, I say live viewers. There's actually only one at the moment, but you're very special, whoever you are. Mohamed, I'm really interested in diving straight in. I know I said actually just before this that we would have a nice casual chit chat first and be like, "How's your day?" But I feel like we did that. And I'm just interested in diving into your work tremendously because your work is really complex. It's multidisciplinary. It kind of draws links between things like Islamic mysticism and your relationship with Islam, as well as contemporary art and specifically the technological and the kind of perspectives that you draw from those two it seems like they're very distinct, but you draw links between them. What got you interested in this and what are the links?
Great question. Yeah, and I often don't get a chance to articulate this sort of thing. So thank you for asking that. I think I'd say that my interest in mysticism and sort of religion and spirituality in general has been like a sort of lifelong thing. It's something that I've struggled with, and I've also been very, very skeptical of at times, but it's something that I haven't been able to escape in my life. It's sort of something I feel tied to in a way that really, really shapes my worldview and my understanding of myself and the world. As for the sort of technological aspect and the way that sort of got absorbed into the former, or sort of appended itself into the former, I guess I'd say I was sort of into video games as a child. Like I just have like very vivid memories of like roaming Blockbuster and just looking at so many PlayStation 2 games and just like having a completely wild imagination about what they might be like. And then like yeah, and only playing very few of them. Yeah, I think I really like to imagine, and I could see like video games as that sort of place where these like individualized worlds like become manifest through through someone's imagination. And so like my dream career as a child was like to be a game designer, and I guess I've realized that. I don't know. Lots of question
you're a game
marks
designer.
There. Yeah, I'm a game designer. Yeah. So I guess like that sort of determined my direction of study. And when I was using a lot of tools, and I guess like even in the last few years, like how important like phones have become, for instance, like smartphones and iPhones. Like I found that my faith was majorly practiced and facilitated through and understood through these contemporary technological tools. And so naturally I started questioning like, well, I don't know, like what is spirituality on my iPhone? You know, like I don't really know what these things are. Like I don't really know what that looks like, rather. And yeah, I'll try to like fast forward from that point to like this point, because there is a lot in between. But basically, I went on this rampage on like new ageism and sort of like Facebook groups like that are very cult like, and like image, like people are reading auras through images in like comment threads and that sort of thing. And I was like, where does the spirit fit into these sort of networked channels and communications. And then I guess in my honors, I got really obsessed with the cyborg, Donna Haraway cyborg. And so I was like, oh, like maybe this is where like this spirit and the contemporary technological, come together as like from my training as a young like Shia Muslim child of Shia Muslims, I sort of understood the body and the spirit as this like intertwined thing. And as nature progresses, our sort of human nature includes these tools, which is a sort of like, you could say that that's sort of proposed in cyborg, proposed in so many things.
Yeah, I think like the tools become an extension of self, right? Like there's something as an interface of the body, but even if you're looking at the duality of body and spirit, they maybe bridge that gap in some weird ways.
Absolutely. I think like there's something oddly human about our tools, in the sense like, well, like actually, let me rephrase that. I think something that I've come to understand is that these tools are like, since they're made by us, they do still have a human element in the way we interact with them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Am I answering your question?
Well, you certainly said like this is how we how you got here. It's something that you're interested in on a personal level. It's something that you now explore in your studies and your work that you produce as a multidisciplinary artist and game designer. I can never say the word multidisciplinary on the right on the first try. But can you draw maybe some deeper, like, I know you've thought deeply about this, but what are the elements of mysticism that we see in the technology? You mentioned things like aura readings on Facebook. I'm thinking about like astrology. You've mentioned, for example, talismanic magic, not just as an ancient old concept, but something quite contemporary and used. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess there's so much there, and I often go on tangents when I talk about this, so I'll try to keep it tight.
Tangents are good.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, okay, yes. Let's lean in. So I guess talismanic magic is something that I'm learning about still, something that I have some reference on, but there's still a lot of questions there. I was particularly interested earlier this year, when I made a work called Bab al-Karim. I was interested in the numerical value that certain characters of the Arabic alphabet, or abjad, because like alphabet is like alpha beta, abjad is like those letters. So it's called abjad. Yeah. So I was interested in the numerical value of the Arabo-Semitic abjad. So that's basically like every Arabic letter has a numerical value to it. And in this certain tradition of creating talismans, I think that sort of originated and expanded through the South Asian subcontinent, was the phrase, right? So the phrase Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, which is like, in the name of God, the most merciful and beneficent. There's definitely many variants on that translation. The numerical value of that phrase is 786. And so they would put the number 786 on jewelry, and that became a sort of like blessed number or symbol. And that was something that really interested me. And that was one of the first things I sort of heard about when I was interested in this. And so in my work, Bab al-Karim, which was at Trocadero earlier this year, I did this sort of like diamond, like I call it a magic square, but it's like a strange, like, it doesn't look like a magic square if you've ever seen one, which is normally like a 3x3 grid with like letters inside of it. This is just an empty square with the writing around it. So I have these series of numbers, which are holy phrases that mean something to me, sort of transcribed in that same alphanumerical translation. So they'll be like Arabic numbers 1330, 3115. And it looks pretty freaky. It looks pretty scary.
When you say pretty freaky or scary, I'm interested to just interrogate that a little bit, because something that is definitely true in Australia, at least, is that Arabic script is seen as other, right? It's otherized, and it produces a fear response for a lot of people. It's like, oh, this is a scary looking script. Is that what you mean by scary, or are you drawing on something else there?
Yeah, there is definitely that sort of ghostliness, or that, well, not ghostliness, sorry, more like that specter of fear that exists in Arabic text, to like certain eyes and certain audiences. I guess like that doesn't exist like as itself. It's definitely contextual on who is viewing it. Yeah, the numbers the numbers do look quite like unusual, and this work in particular was in this completely the walls were painted black, and this design that I had done was in white, and it's sort of in the corner, so it does have this like very striking visual to it. And since they're Arabic numbers, which I think is seen less often than Arabic text, it had this sort of very, I think it looked quite obscure even to me.
Right, because it's like more archaic. It's funny to me also that what we think of as numbers are often referred to as Arabic numbers or numerals because of their history, but they are modern, like changed versions of what you are using in your piece, right?
Absolutely. And they do look quite familiar if you sort of like cut them and place them in different ways. But I guess when they're all bunched together, you sort of lose that sort of the symbol as like separate numbers, and but like for instance,
you've produced this really, like, sorry to interrupt, this sparse aesthetic work that exists in the corner of a museum, and it features this blank magic square with numerals on the outside of the square. And I saw pictures of this. I didn't get to see the work in person, but it's a very evocative piece when somebody is experiencing it, because there's another element, right? The viewer actually is not just watching from afar.
Yeah, that's right. So probably a good thing to mention first, it's a virtual reality work.
Just trying to like draw us to that.
Thank you. I think it's very easy for me, and I think people like who talk to me about my work sort of, it's just so easy to go into like separate parts of it, because I always put so much into things, and that's not a humble brag. I think that's like an issue I have to work on, because I put like everything I'm thinking into this like one word. Yeah.
See, I'm amazed, just as a side note, because it's the total opposite approach that I take, where I never make the word count. I'm always not putting enough in. It feels like it's like, oh, this is a dense idea, but how do I actually make it into a thing? And we sometimes explore some similar themes of like spirituality, in my case, Christian theology, and just like figuring out how this conversation happens is also just a nice meta parallel. Anyway, sorry. So it's a VR work, and the user's got the VR goggles.
Absolutely. Yes. So they sort of are invited to sit on their knees. They sort of like, they put on the device, they sit on their knees, and then in the device, it asks them eventually to like bow to the floor. And what happens is it sort of, once that happens, once they're looking down into the floor, they start descending and strange things happen. And yeah, that's all I'll say. If you've seen the work, you know. If you know, you know. Yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. And there is also a black arc on the floor. It's actually right here. Wait. Yeah. This right here.
Oh
This
yeah,
is
yeah,
my
I see it.
storage.
It's funny when like here's this piece about ritual and symbols, and then you're just like, oh, and here's the very banal like piece of it in storage, like devoid
Just
of
floating
mysticism
somewhere around my head.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's something that I often found when my mother or my father would do things that that I would like become very intrigued with. Like I can't think of an example, but just like using very mundane like plastic things and like assigning this like sort of sacred role to them. I think that's something I really enjoy, and that has like an edge of humor as well as this very important like living in the world today as a spiritual person, or someone who like holds these like ideas of faith that are like considered connected to times of old and that sort of thing. Bit of a sidetrack.
I think no, not at all. I think it's very related because it reminds me, and feel free to correct me, of like, you know, when you're talking about numerology, when you're thinking through the aesthetics of this square or of like, you know, being invited to be on your knees for this VR piece, they elevate the mundane to a spiritual level through the ritual or through the symbology of it. I think that's like the heart of a lot of your work to me. It sounds like, yeah. And I'm curious to know also about your research probe and how you relate it to the Digital Genie, because I feel like that's related as well. So what is this phrase and what's it all about?
Right. So I'd say the Digital Genie is a sort of mental assemblage which identifies the partly spatial and mystical elements that are present in both the jinn and the digital.
Can you take us through what jinn means for those that don't know?
Right. So a jinn, which I usually spell D-J-I-N-N, it can also be spelled J-I-N-N, is what might be more widely known as a genie. In the Islamic cosmology that I understand, because there's many sort of interpretations of what they are, from what I've read and from what I've understood, they are this sort of like hidden being that it's said they're crafted from either smokeless flame or blazing flame. And it's not that they're particularly they are non-human, but they do have certain qualities that we might ascribe to a human, in the sense that they can procreate, they can die, they can follow a religion, they can eat, I think, and they can love, they can feel love.
Do they have a morality system, like the capacity to be good or evil?
Yes. So, I don't know the verse, but there is a verse that says the jinn were created to worship Allah. And something particularly interesting I find is that when the word jinn is used, it's invariably referring to something evil by more sort of like rigid Islamic, that sort of thought, area of thought that that most sources sort of ascribe to. You would see that rigidity of the jinn being these invariably evil beings. And from what I've read further, beyond that sort of beyond what you can find, like if you ask a Muslim or like or Google it, from what I've read, beyond those sort of surface level sources, they are quite neutral. They are quite like tricky in the sense that they're able to shapeshift, they're able to possess things, and they're not particularly like malicious. It just sounds like they just want to have fun. And so that image of like the
Jinn
trickster
just want to
Jinn
have
comes
fun.
up. They just want to have fun. But like you would only sort of see these ideas, or like even like just saying the word Jinn, you would only sort of see that comfort or that understanding from I'd say like folk Islamic or like mystical leaders in Islam. I'd say that like speaking of the Jinn in any regard other than they are like invariably evil spirits, is like not allowed. So I'd say like
this reminds me of like the kind of historical divide that we see, sometimes called, I think you've referred to it as like the golden age of Islamic occult science, and that kind of the language and the research and things that were going on in that time compared to modern Islam, where that kind of mysticism is more frowned upon, or like edited out. But yeah, what's your perspective on that?
What's my perspective on like the golden
sorry
age?
Yeah, I guess like whether there is a real or imagined divide between what we like when we talk about Jinn, and you're saying it's only outside of these particular sources that we see Jinn as non-evil, as neutral. Like, was that always the case, or is that only a recent invention? Do you know, for example? Yeah.
I guess I don't have the best reference on it, but I can say that what you'd call an occult scientist, an Islamic occult scientist, would only be researching things like Jinn, things like alchemy, things like ceremonial magic, astrological magic. They would only be practicing those. Sorry, they would not be practicing those. They would only be observing these as so to protect themselves and to protect other Muslims from these forces. But something interesting happens in the sense that some of these scholars or some of these occult scientists start to practice this in their own way. Namely, what's his name? Ahmad ibn Ali al-Buni. So for short, he's called al-Buni, A-L-L, Buni, B-U-N-I. He has a esoteric model for using the same magical method, but with the abajad, with with Arabic characters, and that practice is ascribed a certain holiness as per something called the ilm al-huruf, which is like the knowledge of words, the knowledge of letters, or like seeking sort of spiritual elevation through the mystery of certain letters. I think a lot of Muslims would understand what I'm talking about through like Aleph Lam Mim, which is like ALM, if I want to make a parallel to English. But of course, that's like so insufficient.
Yeah, it's not a one-to-one. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So those letters are sort of have this like holiness and this mystery ascribed to them, and that like that hiddenness is I think it sort of speaks to a very fundamental part of Islam, or like of mysticism, Islamic mysticism. We have a word for it. It's called batin, which is also one of the names, one of the 99 names of God, which essentially means the hidden. So we have al batin and al zahir, which is sort of the embodied, or the worldly, the logical, and then Barton is like the hidden, the uncertain, the ultimately unknowable. And I think those two themes really come together in a lot of like Islamic mysticism. Yeah, I feel like
I think
sidetracked.
no. I mean, probably, but that's only because I'm asking questions because I'm interested in these topics. But to bring it back to your work, like that's definitely a topic that you're interested in exploring. How so? That's the genie side, talking about jinn and drawing on the hidden, and these kind of like, you know, whether it's numerology, whether it's the mystery of the letters of the alphabet. What about the digital side of things? How does that relate to your
Mm,
explorations, and why specifically things like VR?
mm. I'd say I'd say from my framing of VR, which is this like, and I'm paraphrasing a friend here, um, simultaneously a blindfold and a window, or a, yeah, it's like a
Is this a
simultaneous.
Chad Toprak thing?
Oh, it's not Chad, it's uh it's gonna be so embarrassing if I forgot his, no, Daniel. Yeah, his name is Daniel something, but I did a VR symposium with him recently. um you know who you are if you're watching this. Thank you for this sentence. Yeah, simultaneous blindfold and window.
Sorry, I've got bad internet, and so I don't know whether you can still hear me
Oh
or
yeah,
whether
I
there's just
can.
a bajillion seconds of lag. Okay, cool. That's good. Okay, so VR is a blindfold and a window.
Yeah. Um, and I think that from my framing, if I do take that just to lean on, I'd say my framing is that it is a window into the unseen. And that comes together in a very, like, I am definitely self conscious of spiritualizing or enchanting something which we presume is like dead matter, and like the sort of like post enlightenment skepticism that comes to assigning godly qualities to contemporary technological tools. I am like hyper aware of that, and I sort of like to run with that irony and to say that like technology, like even in the time where they apparently summoned genies and did these like ceremonial magical practices to raise them or to make pacts with them, they still used technologies. But that might be a enchanted ring or certain minerals in the earth, certain herbs, um, maybe certain sharp objects to draw blood. Like all of these things are still technologies. And um, I'm not particularly, I don't think I can't really find the word, but I think this school of thought that questions nature often comes into this. Um, and that could just be like post-structuralism. I'm not sure. It's more like,
some ism thing.
yeah, like sort of new materialist, but like not quite that either. Like even like before, like preceding that. But like I think questioning nature is important because um if we are like part of that nature, our inventions and our like our thoughts and ideas and our like even the shitty aspects of those are still part of nature because we are like earthly beings living on the world. And so like we're not living beside the world, if that makes sense. So like
Right, we're not separate from it in this.
Yeah, in this sort of like yeah. Yeah, I think I know you. I think you understand what I mean.
I think that there's a beauty in the fact that all communication is secretly miscommunication, in my opinion. Right, like there is an imagined, not specific image, but idea of what you're saying, and I'm sure it's not the same, but it's maybe a blindfold and a window into your practice, into your spirituality, into your ideas. And I hope that this conversation has been that for our viewers as well. We've had a really heady, complex conversation with lots of different strands. Just to pull some of them together, it sounds like, we started this with the question, how does your work connect the elements of Islamic mysticism, that psycho-spiritual, to the contemporary art technological, to things like VR or art games that you produce? And I think it sounds like the answer is very multi-layered. It's a deep exploration of a faith that you interrogate internally, that you investigate through the lens of history and culture, and really want to bring some of the old concepts of like magic and mysticism, of talismans, of ritual, and draw parallels with how we interact with digital technologies, with phones, with our online presences and avatars. And through that, you end up constructing what you call the digital genie. Is that a fair, or like an okay culmination of all the things we talked about?
Yeah, it sounds like you put it together much better than I did. Yeah. Yeah, I think
it's so hard to encapsulate these vast realities inside of us, right? Like we're complex and contradictory and all that sort of stuff. And then like I say one sentence and like, oh yeah, that's perfect. It's obviously not true, but it's hopefully a little distillation.
Yeah, it really helps for like to hear it in other people's words. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, it's been such a pleasure to chat with you, Mohamed. I can't wait for people to learn more about your works and experience them themselves. Take care.
Yeah. Thank you. Take care. Bye, everyone.
You are watching The Distillery, a series of casual online interviews, and we have new episodes streamed every day. So do check back. You can find our future guests on distillery.site, as well as all the previous episodes. And you can check out our Instagram at distillery.site and Twitter at distillery-site. I've been saying our and we, but it's actually just me, plus all these incredibly lovely and talented guests. See you tomorrow. Take care.